Today I will be discussing the My Lai Massacre that happened in 1968 and understanding the soldiers' actions through different psychological theories. First, I'll go over the historical context of the Vietnam War and alarming precursors to the massacre. Second, I will go into psychological theories of moral disengagement, dehumanization, and the bystander effect. Third, I'll talk about an unexpected hero, Hugh Thompson Jr., who displayed humility and morality. The Vietnam War occurred in 1954 to 1975 as part of the Cold War. Ho Chi Minh, the leader of North Vietnam, hoped to unite Vietnam under the communist rule. The United States, led by John F. Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson, became involved in the Vietnam War, sending majority of the troops in the mid-1960s. The goal for America was to contain the spread of communism by supporting the democratic South Vietnam. As for My Lai, on March 16, 1968, the Charlie Company, part of the United States Army, believed that they would be encountering a Viet Cong militia in the My Lai village in Cung Nai, South Vietnam. Their mission was to eliminate the threat of the Viet Cong in this village entirely. Instead, the American troops encountered a large group of unarmed women, children, and elderly Vietnamese preparing breakfast before heading to the market. The American soldiers brutally raped, tortured, and murdered hundreds of villagers. The My Lai massacre sparked outrage and mass protests across the American home front, leaving many Americans wondering how their neighbors and family members could be involved in such a violent act. The action of the American soldiers during the My Lai massacre could be understood through psychological theories related to moral disengagement, the bystander effect, and dehumanization. Although moral behavior for humans would be to flee or protect themselves from danger, the self-preservation instinct of humans can lead ordinary people to commit violent and cruel acts. Albert Bandura, who I reference quite a bit, wrote a paper about moral disengagement in the perpetration of inhumanities, and that was published in the Personality and Social Psychological Review journal. He states that moral standards do not operate invariantly as internal regulators of conduct, however. Self-regulatory mechanisms do not come into play unless they are activated, and there are many social and psychological maneuvers by which moral self-sanctions can be disengaged from inhumane conduct. He also states, in terms of dehumanization, that the reconstrual of the conduct itself, so it is not viewed as immoral, and devaluing victims as human beings and blaming them for what is being done to them. The bystander effect is a psychological phenomenon when people are less likely to act in the presence of passive onlookers. The soldiers chose self-preservation and conformity over moral instinct to flee or resist. In hindsight, the public learned Lieutenant Calley, the leader of the Charlie Company, was an active participant in the massacre. The direct involvement of a military leader reinforced the soldiers' obedience because defying a commanding officer would go against the strict hierarchy imposed by the military. The theory of moral disengagement suggests that soldiers may suppress morality while in active combat in the interest of self-preservation. The bystander effect, especially within the hierarchy imposed by the military, can cause hesitancy to step up, or even complicity in violent acts. Dehumanization can cause soldiers to further suppress their empathy towards the Vietnamese, viewing them as sympathizers or threats, not as civilians. A quote from Albert Bandura states that in the face of situational inducements to behave in inhumane ways, people can choose to behave otherwise by exerting self-influence. This was displayed by Hugh Thompson Jr., who at the time was Warrant Officer Hugh Thompson Jr., and he was flying at a low altitude over the troops in My Lai. At first, he thought that the military men were carrying out their mission to take down the militia in the village. As he watched from above, the picture became more clear. His own crew were systematically killing the unarmed men, women, and children civilians. Outraged by these actions, he landed his helicopter between Lieutenant Calley, the leader of the Charlie Company, and the group of Vietnamese, ordering his machine gun men to point at Calley. The confusion allowed many to escape, and Thompson took the rest in his helicopter to safety. He risked his life and career that day. He faced ridicule and isolation during the cover-up of the massacre, but 30 years later, he was awarded with the Soldier's Medal. My goal in doing this research project is not to justify the actions of American soldiers, but to uncover biases that can cause events such as this one. Hugh Thompson Jr.'s actions show that even in the darkest and most difficult circumstances, conscience and reasoning still exist. Understanding these psychological biases can help prevent future wartime atrocities from happening. Thank you for listening to this presentation, and these are my references.